Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Cup Interviews, brought to you by Cup of Hemlock Theatre. I'm your host for this episode, Ryan Borochovitz, and I'm joined by a very interesting group of interviewees. For those who've tuned into our previous episode earlier this week, we just had an interview with Anthony J. Piccioni, who is the playwright and producer of the show One Empire Under God, which is about to premiere in New York City off-Broadway. And today we are joined by some members of the cast who can talk more about the show in depth and their individual characters. So I'm very happy to be joined by all of you. We're going to begin by just letting you introduce yourselves. Just tell us your name and the name of the character you're playing, and most importantly, what is in your cup. So Trey, we'll begin with you.
Hi, I'm Trey Shields. I'm going to be playing the demagogue Damian Cunningham, and I have in my cup some homemade sweet tea.
Beautiful. Okay, next we have Marcus.
Hey, my name is Marcus. I'm going to be playing General River Calvin, and I have orange juice in my cup.
Perfect. Thank you. Mary.
Hi, my name is Mary Miles. I will be playing President Armani Bacali as well as Senator Jane Harvey, and I am drinking some truly strawberry lemonade hard seltzer because it's Sunday, and why not?
Very good. Clara.
Hi, my name is Clara Tan. I play Vice President Zane Thompson, the true winner of this election, Stop the Steal, and I have some ginger ale in my cup.
Very nice. And Sabrina.
Hi, my name is Sabrina Lopez. I am playing Candidate 1, Secretary of State, and Revolutionary 3, and I am drinking green tea in my cup.
Beautiful. And if anyone cares, I'm drinking orange pico tea in my classic The Cup Cup. Hey, that's the show we're on right now. Okay, so let's begin by kind of just hearing a little more about the show. How would you describe One Empire Under God?
I think the way that I typically think about it is it reminds me a lot of the Shakespearean histories in the sense of like it sort of follows like the political dynamic of like the shifting political dynamics of a country, I would say. Because Act 1 and Act 2 are sort of like separate entities. We go through a little bit of a time jump. So it's, I think, really reminiscent of that skip between like Henry VI Part 3 and like Richard III, I would say is the most apt comparison. But in general, I just think it's a play about sort of like, it's a take on the American political climate. And in my eyes, what we've been seeing a lot recently in the American political climate, it's a show that deals a lot about like political underestimation, I think. We have this candidate who is who's a populist who is basically running under this platform of pro-religion, and we have people in the current government, the current regime, whatever you want to call it, that don't really respect that this is a person who is trying to do this thing. There's an interview in the show with Mary, who plays Bacali, talking about the current run for the presidency, and it's like, well, what do you think will happen if he wins? It's like, well, we're not even going to entertain that as a possibility. And to me, that reminds me a lot of the things that have been going on recently in our country. The 2016 election, I think a lot of people looked at that and they didn't think what would happen. They didn't want to entertain it as a possibility. January 6th, I think a lot of people looked at that and, they didn't think that was a realistic risk for the country, that we might have people trying to actually take action on our capital like that. So to me, it's something that sort of takes something that people have been afraid of, something that's been in the news a lot recently, this underestimation, and kind of blows it up to a kind of a sci-fi proportion, a what could happen proportion.
Yeah, very well said. Thank you for that description. I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything to that. Other thoughts? No? Cool. Okay, so I'd like to know just how did each of you become involved in the production? Did any of you attend general auditions, or was there a more interesting story? I know Sabrina and Clara, I believe you had some interesting takes that you maybe wanted to add.
Well, Sabrina and I were part of the original cast on Zoom, which was a whole process in and of itself. Like, you're out there, you're on backstage, you're trying to find something to entertain yourself because, like, this is 2020 and ain't nobody got any work to do, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's no paid work, but it's all on Zoom. So you're over there like, what is this? Oh, shit. This thing calls for a trans character specifically. I gotta be involved in this. And then you submit your self-tape, and then they don't get back to you for like 3 weeks, and you're like, well, forget about that. And then they're like, hey, you got it. And it's like, thanks. would be nice if you had informed me earlier, but glad to be a part of it. But that was fun. The Zoom process in and of itself was an experience.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, for me, very similar to Clara, but I feel like I was thrown into the production about like 3 weeks into rehearsal. Like, I think I was the last one to join. And same as Clara, like I submitted on backstage, is just messing around on backstage, seeing what will stick, you know. And I got an email and they were like, be in this production. And I'm like, oh, I didn't even have to send a self-tape or anything. All right, whatever. And so I was in there. And one thing I didn't know when I jumped onto the production was that it was in New York. So it was Eastern time. I lived in Central California. So it is like 4:30 p.m. and I'm like, I have rehearsal in like 2 hours. I'm gonna clean my room. I'm gonna clean it back. I'm like going about my day, and the stage manager texts me and he's like, where are you? And I'm like, where are you? Like, no one, I didn't know. And then like once we were on the same page, I was like, oh, crap, I'm so sorry. Like, and I just got on. Turns out they didn't need me that day. But the like throughout the whole thing, like it kind of worked for me because it was 3 p.m. my time, 6 p.m. over here. So I was like, I just got off work rehearsal and then I have another rehearsal, blah, blah, blah. But no, like doing the whole thing over Zoom, for me, I was already kind of seasoned in doing online productions because I had started a virtual theater company with a few friends, and we'd already done a couple productions by that point. So like it was just another Tuesday for me, really. But like it was still an interesting process, meeting new people, getting with this whole new production and everything. But I had a really great time doing it personally.
That's great. Yeah, it's always kind of interesting with Zoom theater how people can be coming in from all over the world or all over the country, and it brings a lot of people together, but also creates new challenges about everybody needs multiple clocks like they have in airports to know how to coordinate everything and
pretty much
on the same page. But yeah, it
is exhausting, I'll tell you that much. You're putting all of your energy out into the screen and nothing's coming back. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like
especially with the lag too.
And it's like
yes.
that lag is an energy killer. Like you wouldn't believe. It's horrible.
Yes, I can imagine it would be, and it often is. Like even just in a casual Zoom conversation, I can only imagine when you're doing a Zoom play and you need to react to people in real time, especially when there's comedic timing or just interesting timing to the show that is reliant on this.
It kind of feels like scenes. Oh my god, the fight scene, just kind of like this. You die, you just throw yourself down. I had several. I played different characters on Zoom that I did in our production, and I had multiple death scenes. So it's just like, how quick can I hit the stop record, the stop video button? But for a second, like I miss it, of course, because I'm trying to die on camera. So I'm like sitting here for a second, looking for the button. But
Straight
no,
hand just comes up from the floor, like
pretty much. That was on. I mean, I was one of the Imperial troopers, so I died a lot. Clara wasn't, but like,
I was one.
You were one. Oh, I remember you were one.
Yeah.
But I just remember because like with the jokes thing, it feels like, you know, when you're out with your friends and you tell a joke and no one laughs. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what the lag was like. It was just like boom, nothing, and then the scene just kind of falls sideways, I guess.
Yeah.
So I'll be thankful that live theater is back.
Yes.
Oh my god.
Yes.
And that we're all vaccinated. Very important. Very
Yes.
important.
If anyone watching is not yet vaccinated, look at this exciting bunch of actors who can all vouch for its efficacy and the excitement of returning to live theater. Consider that. Yay. Wonderful. Okay, so it's exciting to have gone from this journey from the digital space and now returning into the theatrical space. Any specific, I know we've talked about some of the challenges of Zoom, but anything interesting to report about this return and the adapting the show, especially for those of you who were in the previous version, of what challenges and considerations came up in making this piece work in physical space after it had already been digital?
when I came in late because of some scheduling conflicts. So, but when I came in for the first rehearsal that I was scheduled for, like I stepped into the room and it's a bog standard, like, you know, rehearsal room, concrete walls, nothing special. When I'm in that room and I'm like, I think I'm gonna cry.
It was one of those things for me where it's like, I mean, like, I'm sure everyone here can relate. Like, we all missed being on stage, like, in person. And we talked about this, my second rehearsal. All of us, like, when you're in the acting world, like, you go through, especially, like, at my point, like, I'm still kind of early in. So, performances are few and far between. So, my last production was in December of 2019. So even after a whole pandemic and then that time before the pandemic started, like I hadn't been on stage at all. So it just felt like so refreshing and so like exhilarating. There was so much energy just bouncing off of the walls, even if it was just a cylinder block of a space. Like there was we all had so much energy. We all felt like, it just felt like you just, I'm sorry, you just feel like the amount of pent up energy that all of us had from being locked inside or not booking productions and that kind of thing. Like that's at least what it felt like for me when we were in rehearsal.
Thank you. Yeah, it's so nice to hear. Like it's really exciting that things are able to reopen, especially like something like this that had in its infancy was catered towards Zoom. It had to grapple with all those special challenges to now really bringing it back to the physical space is exciting. And obviously, yeah, these great feelings of relief of just being back in it and the energy that comes with that is always a great pleasure. So I'd like to now kind of dig deeper into each of your characters because I'm sure you all have a lot to say about the journeys you've been on with these people. So I just kind of want to ask each of you, tell us a little more about your individual characters and what has it been like to inhabit these roles. Trey, we'll start with you for this one.
Yeah, I mentioned a little bit about my character, but I play Damien, who's sort of like this like populist, pro-religion, starts out as just kind of generally pro-religion, like anti-atheist talk show host. It's called the Virtue Cast in the show, the idea like a virtual podcast sort of thing. And eventually just sort of like devolves into this like strictly pro-Christian, like demagogue populist leader. And for me, it's like, I think looking at a character like this, there are a lot of traps you can fall into as an actor. I think you can look at a character like this and be like, oh, like they're evil, they're a liar, they're a bad politician, and that's what I'm going to do with them. But I don't think that's realistic. I don't think people like that, that, you know, run a campaign under hate or a very particular, you know, push a demographic of people to do a thing. I don't think that they think they're bad people. You know, I think they're on a very pro sort of righteous mission, and that's what I think Damien thinks he's on. He's on this very righteous mission from God to restore faith in the country, to give people who are religious an ability to practice their religion and feel like that they can do that freely. So I think avoiding that trap has been really interesting for me. Like, how do I not just make this like, you know, an evil guy who's trying to take over the country, but really give life into the fact that he's a real person who believes he's doing a great thing, and he's putting the energy in because he would give his life for this cause, and he thinks that he's furthering a grand mission. So that's what my mind has been around lately with the character.
Yeah, there's always a great challenge to how to humanize a character who you just fundamentally disagree with, who, like, despite being the protagonist, at least in the first half of the play, is quite literally the villain from a certain point of view, or arguably the villain. Have you taken any inspiration from actual political or punditry figures in your characterization of this role? I don't know if Trump is maybe a little too far, or people like Alex Jones or Tucker Carlson maybe were
I think
interpretation.
Alex Jones is one that's come up a lot for me, just because, you know, the nature of him running like a talking head show like this is so, you know, it's impossible not to think of the guy. I've definitely tried to not push myself too far into that corner, though, just because I think that's a little bit too absurd for me to realistically grasp. Personally, I'm from Montana, which is like kind of, you know, the most middle of the country that you can get in terms of like political alignment and rhetoric. So for me, it's been a lot of like sort of taking upon the sort of talking points that I heard like my friends talking about growing up, the things that I heard like talking around their dinner tables growing up, and the way that people think about those issues, I think, has been really influential on how I've approached this character. But I wouldn't say it's necessarily like one political figure.
Okay, fair enough. Marcus, how about you? Who's your character, General Calvin?
Yes, so my character is General Calvin, who's really trying to shift the world back from a kind of extreme standpoint back to something that is more equitable for everyone. Not to give too many spoilers away, but he's really trying to reset the political status quo and kind of instilling within the group of people around him and the kind of rebel alliance that's around him, really instilling them with the core values that they need to get back to. So humanity, empathy, all the things, of course, we would like to see in our world, and just really serving as the rallying call for people to get back to that norm, and also showing at times the sacrifice that's needed to get back to those norms. It's no easy task, and everybody has to lend their part, because it's ultimately something that can only be achieved if everyone comes together and unites with one common goal. And he really kind of serves as the lightning rod and the focal point for that energy, in terms of kind of rewriting the political landscape that exists during the time of the play. So it's been fun, and it's a heavily a role that's heavily based around kind of military culture as well. So that's been fun to get into. My dad formerly was like in the Marines, so it's kind of like something that I could vicariously kind of get a channel through me, and talk to him about it and stuff like that. So it's definitely exciting challenge, and just the passion and energy that the character has is something that's really inspiring, and it's been inspiring me in my real life. So it's been great to kind of dive into it and play around.
Oh, that's amazing. And yeah, I kind of, at least reading the character on the page, I got the sense that perhaps he would have a similar problem to what Trey has, but maybe in the opposite direction, that this character is like this great paragon of like virtue and greatness, that he's the one you can really like sink your teeth into. But that could also be difficult to find like the depth and the humanity of, when they maybe do seem to be like, oh, just perfect in every way. So have you had any challenges in finding those depths for yourself?
Yes, and that's an that's an ongoing thing that I'm discovering. Because yes, like the truth is everybody's flawed. So, no matter how a character is painted on one extreme or the other, it adds more depth, of course, if you can find just different elements to include all along the spectrum of morality, ethics, etc. So it's been an interesting challenge, definitely, because he is a hero, if I could use that term, but as all people, has his flaws. So yeah, finding that and adding nuances and depth is definitely been an interesting challenge, certainly. So it's one I'm continually exploring, but excited to explore as well. So.
Fantastic. Okay, Mary, you're up next. Let's hear about your characters.
Right, so the first character I'm playing is President Armani Bacali, and she, at the start of the show, is the current president, and then the end of her 2 terms is up, and so she's endorsing her vice president, Zane Thompson, who Clara is playing, and I would say, she is overly optimistic about the Democratic Party, because, like Trey had mentioned earlier, there's a scene where she's being interviewed where she says that the Republican candidate doesn't stand a chance. There's no way they're going to be president. And I feel like it's that, I don't want to say naivety, but she's just so optimistic that the Democratic is going to pull together, and her whole agenda is progressive humanism. So she thinks that everybody else thinks that the way she does, but really in the interview they say things like, your approval rating is at an all-time low, and, do you think anything's going to get done while you're still in office? And she's like, yeah, people will join together. And I feel like she's just a little too optimistic for the times. And then the second character is Senator Jane Harvey, who is a 180 from the president, because she is working for Trey's character, the Republican candidate. But she's kind of his sounding board on the more, maybe you shouldn't do that. Maybe that's going a little too far. Maybe you shouldn't be, hurting people together and like making all these religious statements and stuff like that. So it's two very different characters. So I'm excited because they're also like back to back. Like there's a major quick change there.
Mm-hmm.
So
right, just practically speaking, that's definitely a challenge. Yeah.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it'll be interesting going from one side to the other, and I'm excited. It's gonna be a good time. Yeah, I like playing a president. I've been watching like presidential speeches and mostly Hillary, not Obama. I know the character's kind of based on Obama, but I feel like Hillary is the more relatable of the two for me personally.
For sure. And it's certainly set in that distant future where hopefully we'll have had many female and preferably non-binary presidents by the time, although that becomes a plot point in the show, which we will talk about shortly. But yeah, do you find, because you mentioned how these characters, at least ideologically, are very different from each other, both of them. But then at the same time, they kind of both represent this, I don't know if voice of reason is the right word, but they both kind of show the, I guess, ideologically correct position in their own different way, even if one of them is coming from the Democratic side and the other, well, obviously from this fundamentalist Christian perspective, but still being a bit of a moral compass within that subplot. Did you find like these two voices maybe gelled in a certain way, or do you really have to switch your brain into two different directions to play them?
Not really, because I feel like Harvey, like, she's, even though she is like a fundamental Christian and like wants the religious aspect to go into politics, she doesn't want it to be so heavy-handed, and she doesn't want Trey's character to, become a dictator in any way. She just wants good Christian family values back, so she's not quite so heavy-handed. So yeah, I think she's got more in common with Bacali than you would assume from them being on different sides of the political line, I guess.
Yeah, but then it's kind of interesting, this maybe thematic parallel that is being drawn by having you double cast as both of them. So thanks for delving into that a little bit. Clara, let's hear about Vice President Zane Thompson.
Yes, as you know, the one who should have won the election, I stand by that. It was rigged. They stole this election. It was terrible. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, I got to have a long chat with Anthony about her actually, and because I was trying to understand what his perspective was when he wrote the character and when he came up with her. And so Anthony's out here telling me like, oh, she's an activist. Before she was an activist, she ended up joining with President Bacali, like not necessarily as like a marriage of convenience, but optically speaking, it's nice to have someone that's a little more left than you, who is out there doing like on the ground work. While like, as I understand, like he told me that he envisioned Bacali as being more of a career politician, and it's been an interesting experience because someone who is an activist, I think, especially like no matter what time you live in, you're extremely aware of the political climate surrounding you and of the material conditions and the history that led up to that point, which has been an interesting challenge for me to play because in the text of the script, Zane Thompson is a little bit she's not as hard hitting as you might expect someone who is an activist to be. She's not out there throwing shoes at like the Republican candidate or anything like that. You know what I mean? She's not like out there being more brutal with her words. And when you compare that to what you hear from activists today and activists of the past, they have always been the people who are on like the vanguard of political change, shall we say. So it's been an interesting balancing act for sure. And I appreciate that that Anthony wrote a trans character into this play. Like, specifically, since I'm playing her, the character is a trans woman in this particular iteration of the play, and we got to have some fun conversations about, like, you know, how she might speak and how she would carry herself, because I personally didn't want her to come across as, I'm not sure how online all of you guys are, like if you're plugged into like the internet culture wars or anything like that. But every few months or so, like you get this video from someone filming, usually a trans woman, who gets very annoyed with someone for misgendering her, and she's like, "Oh, why aren't you gonna use my pronouns?" And then like, the punchline is that she still looks like a guy, supposedly. So, you know, we got to have a few talks about how to ensure that she doesn't come across like that, you know, because as a politician, you'd be very concerned with optics and strength. Like in that whole debate scene, I have a debate with Damien, and we had a discussion about ensuring that it seemed like we were on equal footing, as opposed to like one fully dominating over the other, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. Like reading that debate scene, I very much got the sense that for Vice President Thompson, like the gender is just a non-issue. It's like, I'm here, I have my policy, my agenda, and it's Damien who's really being like, aha, but my religious constituents are not happy about this. And it's, yeah, hopefully, again, by the time we get to, 400 years in the future, these things will no longer still be as prevalent in politics. But yeah, it's certainly an interesting cautionary tale that I think we're presented with here. And I really appreciate everything you said here about the way you've tried to handle this character and play to these different like activist, politician sort of dynamics that really have to be taken into consideration in the way this character is played. Thank you for all of that.
I mean, like you see, like Bernie Sanders, right? Every time he gets in front of a reporter, every time he gets in front of a camera, he's like, "Okay, we're gonna talk about expanding Medicare for seniors. That's what we're gonna do." You know, like that's
great impression, I must say.
That's a pretty good Bernie, yeah.
People try to, like, there was this one whole article in the New York Times where Maureen Dowd is like, "Hey, what do you think of Free Britney?" And he's like, "Don't care, not interested, let's do it. We're here to talk policy." And, you know, that's what I appreciate, you know. That's what you want in a politician, someone who actually cares about the nuts and bolts of getting things done and steers away from the cultural war issues.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Sabrina, last but not least, you have a bit of a laundry list of ensemble roles. Let's hear about all of those.
Yeah, I listed them out because I knew my thoughts would get all jumbled together. The first character I play is called Candidate 1, and she is running against Damien Thompson in the primary. And my character has like a little, like, makes little snide remarks, but she's the phrase that I think of when I think of this character is when George Bush is running for president and everyone's like, "Oh, you could have a beer with him." Mm-hmm. Like, she's trying to be that kind of, I'm so personable character, like I'm your best friend. I can joke around with you. I can have fun here. But really, she does lean towards the left, and she is more of a liberal character. But she's like, I guess she's like, like Damien Cunningham's like worst enemy when it comes to how she approaches religion, because she just kind of approaches it like, "Oh yeah, well, me and God had sex, so you know what," like that kind of like energy, you know what I mean? So when it comes to her, I kind of approach her as just being very cavalier and having this she knows that she's gonna get elected, even though she doesn't. But she's just trying to, like, you know what? I'm here because I have like these policies, I have these ideals, but also like I want the people to trust me, so I'm gonna go towards the, I could get a drink with you. Want to get a drink tomorrow? Like that kind of personality. My second character is the Secretary of State. So after Damien Cunningham becomes president, I don't want to say what he does, But kind of like Harvey's character, we're all in the room kind of like, hey, we want to do this thing that'd be horrible for the global politics. Don't. And then just, fuck us. Sorry, it just gets sent out of the room, But it's like the way I kind of approach it is I'm a female cabinet leader in a room with a white supremacist president. So kind of how would I approach this being a woman? Am I going to be forward and straight out like I know this character can be? Or am I going to pull back because I am a woman? So dancing that line of how do I approach the president with just knowing the setbacks that I have. And also I am a person of color as well. So like a lot working against me with this president. So that kind of energy. But my favorite character that I play is Revolutionary 3. Because I have her listed as a pessimistic revolutionary. Because every time she opens her mouth, she's saying, no, we can't do that. No, we can't. No, we can't go back to save this person because we're going to get caught. And I kind of see that as like a more realistic character because my character's kind of voicing what are the other revolutionaries are thinking when it comes to taking really big risks with the steps that we're going to take towards our goal. I don't want to spoil anything. But a lot of times I find myself in positions where do I agree with General Calvin? Do I disagree? What am I going to do about that? If I do agree, what am I going to do about that? A lot of times my points of view go against the opinions of our heroine as well. So it really makes you think about how I feel about a lot of the people in the room. Do I like this person? Do I dislike this person? Or what are my relationships to everybody here? Because the other revolutionaries and I, we're all cool, but this girl comes in and we're like, who the hell is this? So it's that I just see her as a very cautious person because she comes across a lot of situations where she is the one that everyone doesn't want. Like she has an opinion and the audience says, I don't want to go with that because I want to go with what the heroine said. So yeah, those are my characters.
Well, it's interesting you describing all of them. It sounds like the common thread between them is you're a voice of opposition in every single context. That in the presidential debate, you're
whether it be left or right, exactly. Like, I guess I am the voice of opposition in every scene that I'm in. That's cool. But yeah, it's a really interesting thing because like it helps me kind of delve deeper into my character and how I actually see things versus how my character actually sees things, and it's a journey. And then also how are these characters different as well, and ensemble members roles are so much fun in my opinion.
Of course, and you get to play around with different interpretations and voices and perspectives with them. And
absolutely.
And especially if you are representing opposition in all of these contexts, I could see very much you are the catalyst for the drama. You are creating the conflicts that the other more lead characters, so to speak, have to bounce off of and maybe adapt to and find ways to respond to and propel the plot forward accordingly. So might feel like a thankless role, but you're the backbone perhaps of the entire endeavor.
I enjoy it.
Glad.
If I could just jump on a point that Sabrina raised earlier, something that I wanted to say that I forgot and now I remembered. So thank you, Sabrina. But there are 3 women currently in this interview, and I'm not sure if you guys would agree with me. Maybe yes, maybe no. But there seems to be a certain expectation on how women politicians specifically are supposed to comport themselves. Whether in public or during a debate or, even when you're speaking with your boss in private, it seems to be a common thread that all of the characters have had to navigate in some way or another, either being talked down to or condescended to or being expected to pull back what you actually want in order to let the other person feel like they're a little bit smarter than you.
You kind of have to manipulate your way through that because it's it was like I said for the Secretary of State, you kind of have to maneuver how you want one thing, you want this thing, I want the president to not do this thing. So me being POC, me being a woman, how am I going to appeal to his interests so that he actually doesn't do the thing that he's thinking about doing. And it's a dance, really, just trying to figure out what's too much, what's too little in that kind of situation, and how you're actually going to achieve your goal. That's the way I look at it.
It's an interesting point that, Clara, you brought up here, and maybe, Mary, I'll toss the question to you. Do you feel like playing these female politicians, you integrated any of that gender dynamic into the way you play the game with your male counterparts in politics?
I would say with Harvey, yes, the senator who's working for Cunningham, Trey's character. Definitely, I would have to say that she has to take on that more female, say, be careful what she says around him, don't upset anybody. She gets sent out of the room at one point, even though she's making very valid points, but he just doesn't want to listen to her, so she gets sent out of the room. With Bacali, not quite so much, because she is already elected president. There is the interview scene where the interviewer is trying to get a rise out of her by stating how low her approval rating is and things like that. And I feel like any president other than Trump wouldn't want to let the interviewer get to them. They would want to have that state of calm, state of, I've made my decisions, these are what I believe, you're not going to get a rise out of me. I feel like that's kind of gender neutral. I feel like any president wouldn't want to show their weakness that way. So yeah, I'd say for Harvey, the gender dynamic does play a part, but for Bacali, not quite as much. Just because she's already elected president, and she can go on. She goes on like a little mini tirade about technology, but I feel like any president would do that, male or female.
Fair enough. It's certainly something, like you mentioned, that your inspiration for the character was more than anything Hillary Clinton, and you could totally picture, had she won the election, that would very much be her approach to whether or not it's pushing forward her agenda or just the way she would handle interviews, or did and still does handle interviews to this day. So, yeah, seems very reasonable. We are kind of approaching the end of the list of questions I came in with. I don't know if any of you had last thoughts about your characters or the play before we wrap up. No? Okay. Well, One Empire Under God opens on November 11th and runs until the 21st. Where can people buy tickets and follow the show for updates?
They're on Instagram, and everything is on the Instagram bio, including the link where you can click on it to buy tickets. Yeah, so it's at One Empire Under God.
Perfect.
Simple. Oh, I know. No spaces, no dots, no dashes. Just
Great.
like that.
So follow that along. And before we sign off, I'd like to give each of you a chance to plug your own personal social media handles or websites or perhaps other projects that you have on the horizon. We've been going in a pretty standard order through this, so let's reverse that order. Sabrina, why don't you go first?
My Instagram is Sabrina_MAE21. I'm mostly active professionally through there, so if you want to give me a follow, see what's up, that'd be cool. I follow back.
Clara.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at actual_Clara. It is currently locked down for reasons, but if you're interested in following me, send me a DM and I'll be like, oh yeah, sure, you're one of the people from Listen to That podcast. Amazing. All right.
Wonderful. Mary.
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram at mkmiles, MILES 2316, and it's just your generic Instagram.
Perfect.
If you want to see pictures of my dog, you got it.
Everybody loves seeing dog pictures. It's great.
Bring him for rehearsal next time.
Okay.
That would be amazing. I put all my updates on Instagram, so that's probably the easiest way to keep in touch and reach out. So yeah, my Instagram handle is at marcusrs.x, MARCUSRS.x.
Perfect. And Trey, finish us off.
Yeah, same with me. Instagram, you can follow me at Yert11, YERT11, or if you want to visit my website, you can go to treyshi.com, TREYSHIE.
Perfect. Well, thank you all for joining me very much. Unfortunately, I'm not in the New York area, so I will be tuning into the show through this lovely live stream option that is available. And I encourage anyone of our listeners who can attend live, do so, or if you are not geographically positioned to do so, tune into the live stream version of it. And yeah, looking forward to the show. Thank you all so much for joining me. Anyone interested in following Cup of Hemlock Theatre, we are COH Theatre on all platforms. And yeah, tune in for more great theater-related content. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You.